like 1,000 no's, and then on like the 1,011th person they asked said yes, and it became a $1 billion thing. Hello and welcome to Prosperity Weekly, first episode. My name is Henry Eisenstein. I'm with my co-host
Bart Henderson. Excited to be here today, Henry. We are bringing you guys a weekly show where we talk about all things regarding to wealth, finance, business, and everything as far as goes with your professional well-being and wealth well-being.
Love it. In today's topics, we're going to be discussing buying your first investment property. Basically help people understand that anyone on planet Earth can go out and make money in real estate.
Definitely. So the thing to know is that today we're going to be going over investment properties for everybody. So whether you have $10,000, $25,000, or $250,000, this is really for everybody. We're going to be going so that if you're a beginner and you literally only have $10,000 worth of money to put down, that we can show you how you can get into an investment property and how that might be able to help you over time. So really, this show is for everybody who's ever thought that they may want to own an investment property. So I think it's good if we start out with that first one, Henry, which is the large down payment. So for those of you who don't know, Henry is what I would call a real estate guru. So Henry's got a couple different opinions and points of view on this. I'm really going to try to hone in on how we get people started with that small amount of money, whereas Henry's going to give us more of a global view on things. So Henry, what do you have to say about the large down payment myth at this particular point?
My first investment property that I ever bought as a sole owner by myself, my own personal investment property, by the way. And we are talking investment property that I did not live in. Single family house. I was out of pocket just shy of 30 grand. I think it was like 29-ish thousand bucks. Okay, to buy my first property. This was $160,000 single family house. I was able to basically structure, I think it was like 15% down. It was a hard money loan that I got because I was going to renovate it. And this property, beyond my closing costs, because it was down payment of 15% plus closing costs, came to about 29 grand. And 29,000 bucks for a single family house isn't too shabby. Obviously, in today's market and what I do today, as a commercial real estate broker, obviously we're dealing with much larger properties. So I think there's been this disconnect of like wanting to buy my first investment property and I think I only have 10 grand. What on planet Earth can I do?
You said one thing that's important there, which is you kind of qualify what an investment property is, right? So today, when we're talking about investment properties, we're not talking about necessarily buying your first home for you and your family to live in, but this is a property that's going to produce income outside of your first home, right? Or in some instances, we're talking about this low dollar down that you might need. So if you look at the new Fannie Mae program, this is pretty new off the presses, right? November, you can now put down 5% on a property to buy your first investment property. I mean, this is unbelievable. So there are some caveats there, but people think you have to put down $200,000 for an investment property. It's not true. Henry just told you about his own personal experience, but nowadays, you've got this 5% down program where, I mean, gosh, you can take a small amount of money with 5% down. What this program allows you to do is also take the rental income and add that as a piece of your income equation. The caveat is it has to be owner occupied, right? So you can buy up to a 4-family unit, but you have to live in one of those units, which is really a positive thing in a lot of aspects. So if you want to become a first-time landlord, it's good that you're there to see things. It's good to get that kind of experience. So everybody thinks you need $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 down. I mean, Henry, what does that look like? 5% down. What other kind of things have you seen?
Well, so funny enough, after so I bought that property and then sold it 30 days later because I was like terrified. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? But I ended up making 30 grand in profit. Okay. So I was like, I'll just take my money. I'm happy. I then took that 30K and funny enough, I literally bought my very own investment property that I lived in. I did an FHA loan, 3.5% down. I literally took that money. This is exactly what happened. I took 3.5%, which was 30 G's because I also had my friend as the mortgage lender, which gave me a nice hefty credit. So I was only out of pocket 30 grand. It was a $750,000 4-family property. And I lived in the 2-bedroom upstairs and I rented out the rest of the unit. So literally 30,000 bucks to buy a $750,000 4-family property. So very, very similar. Obviously now that was an FHA. So I had mortgage insurance. They have this new program, which is 5% down conventional. Pretty awesome.
There's ways where even if you have no money, you can try to reach out to people you know, right? It might be difficult or awkward at first, but you might have an aunt who has a bunch of money. And you might want to say to that aunt, if you could just give me $40,000, not give it to me, but invest it in a property. I want to own 20% of that property and I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of the rent. I'll get the renters. I'll do maintenance. I'll do the finances, everything, right? So that's just one example. You might have a family friend, you might have an aunt and uncle, parent, whatever it is, but you don't necessarily need money to get into investing in real estate if you have some creative ways to do it. Now, you might say, I don't know anybody like that. I would say, until you ask, you don't really know. Right? Henry, what other kind of ways of getting into real estate creatively have you seen?
You end up meeting people all the time who own property and probably want to own more of it. In my experience, I've had several people that I've come across who own real estate, and I simply just get their criteria of saying, hey, what kind of properties are you looking for? And then that's what I started prospecting for. My first friend, actually came through with as a cold call. The first guy I started investing in real estate with was a cold call. We ended up building a decent relationship. I got an understanding what kind of single family houses he likes to buy. I started prospecting for those types of properties, and we went on to flip over 70 properties in a few short years. And I was a small percentage owner in a lot of those deals, right? Like I didn't make a ton of money on every single deal. I mean, on everyone, but it added up over time, right? I mean, that one person made me basically, collectively almost $1 million, right? Like it was just this one individual. So very life-changing stuff where like I didn't have any
it's interesting.
skin in the game.
You say it's a cold call, right? I mean, I'm saying go ask an aunt, an uncle, maybe a friend. From your perspective, this could even be somebody you know in the community. This could be somebody who has some money to invest. You just want to reach out to them because you don't have any money and you want to start your own kind of real estate portfolio, essentially.
And like, I think what's important to note is that, like you had mentioned, which I like, is just you don't know until you ask. And there are so many instances of people. I don't remember the exact person where this story represents, but I know that like you can go look this type of stuff up where like it's like those instances where someone has an idea and they ask, like, I think it was Kentucky Fried Chicken as the one I'm thinking of, but like they went to like 1,000 people and they asked for investment or this bank to take it, public or whatever it was. And they got like 1,000 no's. And then on like the 1,011th person they asked said yes, and it became $1 billion thing. So it's like, you just never know. And you just got to go ask people. Right. And I like how you also mentioned, like, take 20% and just be like super giving on your first 1, 2, 3 deals and just say like, hey, I'm going to do all the work. You collect a large percentage of the returns. I just want to get my feet wet. And this is an unbelievable, like the one thing to keep in mind though, is that this works really, really well on this partner strategy when you find a great deal, because whoever finds a good deal, you're going to find a way to make money on it.
One of the myths, which I hear, I would say weekly, I literally hear this almost weekly from people is, I don't want to deal with a broken toilet in the middle of the night. I just laugh every single time, right? Because to put your financial well-being, to put your family on the back burner, to not get all the benefits of real estate and all this other stuff because some fictional toilet might break in the middle of the night, it blows my mind. So Henry, interested to hear what you have to say before I put in my 2 cents regarding some of my properties. And I will tell you, I've had toilets break in the middle of the night. It's literally happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you too.
Absolutely. There's 2 sides of this. Number one, the thinking of that everything's going to work out perfectly is BS, right? Like it's obvious, like there are going to be things that comes up, right? Like the toilet might break. The water might give you some issues. I literally probably had one of the worst experiences that someone could have with a toilet issue recently, where a tenant had literally a running toilet. Okay. The water was running, the toilet was running, and I paid the water and it ran without notice for almost 100 days. It cost me nearly $5,000. Now, here's the thing. I want to share with you something. As much as that might, you can say like that's whatever. On this one property I've owned for nearly, 2.5 years or something like that. That property's made me cash flows almost $50,000 a year. I have 50% back of my capital that I put into it back already. So my cash on cash returns is 100% per year, by the way, on this property. So if $5,000 is the worst thing that ever happens on this property, which that is a huge issue, big deal. So just know
to that exact point, nowadays, a lot of people are getting reduction in insurance premiums, let's say, if you put in an emergency shutoff valve. So $115 at Home Depot, literally costs you $115, might cost you another $200 to have a plumber put it in at the main or whatever it is. If it notices an irregularity in how water's flowing into the house or through the house, boom, emergency, automatically shut off the water, right? Everybody who's so worried about, toilet breaking in the middle of the night, for $300, that
solves your problem.
The funny thing about the toilet breaking in the middle of the night is if the toilet breaks in the middle of the night, generally speaking, I'm not even within reach of a property. So there's going to be a plumber going and doing that in the middle of the night. So my point is it worth your financial freedom? Is it worth your family's financial freedom to say, I'm not going to buy an investment property because a toilet might break in the middle of the night. I just can't see that.
Let's go into the next myth here, which is you have to be rich to own investment properties. The single family house that you live in, the house that you live in today, or that you're going to buy per se, can possibly be the best investment you've ever made for an average everyday individual. If you plan on living somewhere for 20, 30 plus years, buy a house, pay your mortgage, and sit on it for as long as you possibly can, because it might be the best investment you've ever made, dollars and cents wise. However, if you are earning some decent money and you have some money set aside, buying a single family house, in my opinion, because I'm somebody who moves very regularly, would be very stupid. It wouldn't make sense for somebody like me who moves every few years to buy a house, because I'm going to have to hope and pray that the market goes up to make sure that I'm making money on that house.
It makes sense for you to be buying 4 family units with 5% down at every location you go to. And then
in a perfect world, sure. My wife might kill me, but so it's like we've found that like it makes more sense to just rent in the meantime until we have some place that we know we're probably going to be for 10, 20, 30 years. Or if I wanted to buy a place every few years, buy it a steal, buy a property that's a very good price and in a decent location, and I'm probably going to do okay as well. But it's just earning capacity, however you're financially doing, I think has a major impact on how you invest, which is the purpose of this.
I think the one counter argument there would be, if you're not purchasing the property wherever you go, you're looking at sky is always, the grass is always greener. Someone's going to make more money in the years to come. Whereas I think the real value in someone's home being kind of a wealth storage is that they have to save. Like, you have to pay that mortgage every single month. So for you moving around, you have other properties where money's coming in an investment.
Exactly.
I get it. Less maintenance, whatever, it might make sense. But for an average family, average person, just buying their home and having that mandatory savings every month come in a mortgage, I think it's really valuable, because things happen. Expenses come up, cars break, emergencies, health emergencies. You always have that financial thing to fall back on, which is something we didn't address earlier too much, which is that when you're investing in real estate, you have an asset. So that's 100%. A little different than putting money in an index fund. You can go to the bank and get a mortgage against your asset and use that money to go do something else, right? You can leverage that asset. That's another one of the really big important things of why you look at real estate.